The Miranda-class vessel was arguably the most used vessel in Starfleet. The Miranda-class was a type of starship introduced by Starfleet in the late 23rd century and remained in use throughout the 24th century. Miranda-class starships such as the USS Reliant were in service as early as 2267. Miranda-class starships were in service well into the mid-2280s. Some Miranda-class starships constructed during the first half of the 24th century fell under the authority of the Ordained division around stardate 22519.5. The mission profile of the Miranda-class varied from performing various scientific roles to conducting patrol duties. By the later half of the 24th century, one variation of this class, the USS Lantry, was known by the designation of Class 6, Federation Supply Ship. The Miranda-class was present in several major Federation engagements against the Borg, including the Battle of Wolf 359 and the Battle of Sector 001. They were also present in numerous Dominion war battles. They were often served as escorts. Many of the ships of the class saw action during the Operations Return, the first and second battles of Chakotay, and the Battle of Cardassia. Many Miranda-class vessels were stationed near Deep Space Nine. The configuration of the Miranda-class shared a similar design lineage and features with the refit Constitution-class, implemented in the early 2270s. The design also closely resembled the Soyuz-class starships that were also in service around the same time. The Miranda-class was composed of a single primary hull consisting of a saucer that was similar to that of a Constitution-class. However, the bridge module position on the top and in the center was shaped differently than the Constitution-class module. Mounted on the underside of the primary hull were two nacelle pylons connected to the warp nacelles. Design features on the primary hull included a docking port located on the forward section of the ship. The aft section included two shuttle bays, separated by the vessel's impulse engines. These shuttle bays were visually numbered, 1 being on the rear port side and 2 on the rear starboard side. There were 5 different known hull configurations utilized with the Miranda-class during this time in service. The predominant Miranda-class design included a superstructure or roll bar immediately above the primary hull as a dorsal extension of the ventricle nacelle pylon. This superstructure was equipped with torpedo launchers and phaser banks. Some configurations lacked the roll bar superstructure, and in other cases included 2 large sensor pods affixed to the port and starboard side of the primary hull. In other configurations, there was a single pod module. By late 2373, Miranda-class ships using the predominant design had undergone upgrades to their warp nacelles, and in some cases, impulse engine systems. Standard to all designs were 6 dual phaser banks located on the primary hull, 3 mounted to the top and 3 mounted to the bottom of the saucer. Also standard to all designs were 2 single phaser bank emitters just underneath the impulse engines. In those ships possessing the roll bar, that superstructure contained 2 tubular phaser emitters on each side that could both fire forward and to the ship's flank. There were also 2 forward and 2 aft photon torpedo launchers housed in a pod module in the center of the superstructure. By the 24th century, a number of modifications were made to the Miranda-class weapon systems. Some Miranda-class vessels, such as those with the twin pod variants, included a phaser array mounted on the lower part of the ventral dome and a photon torpedo launcher in the main part of the ship rather than on the roll bar. The Class 6 variant of this class featured Class 3 defensive armament. A majority of 24th century Miranda-class vessels of the roll bar variants, particularly during the Dominion War, were equipped with phaser bank arrays and photon torpedoes equivalent to those that are on other ships of the era. while keeping the same weapons array placements as the 23rd century Miranda. The design of the Miranda-class bridge during the 23rd century shared a similar layout to contemporary vessels of that era. Located on Deck 1 of the saucer section, the main bridge housed the command center of the Miranda-class. The design lineage of the main bridge was fairly standard, four-plan for a Federation starship. The ship's view screen was placed against the forward bulkhead with side-by-side navigation and helm controls. The captain's chair was directly aft of the aforementioned stations. Several variants existed in the layout of the surrounding stations. At the rear and center of the USS Reliance bridge was the turbolift entryway. The primary stations, which were along the rear of the bridge, included the tactical station on the port side of the bridge. Along the rear starboard side of the bridge were the primary science stations and communication stations. The bridge, similarly found on board the USS Saratoga NCC 1887, also had primary stations located on the perimeter of the bridge. However, the Saratoga's bridge included the science station on the port side of the bridge, nearly parallel to the navigation station. By the 24th century, further reconfigurations were made in the layout of the bridge, including the separation of the navigation and helm station, which were replaced by con on either starboard side and ops on the port side. The bridge of the USS Lantry was relatively simplistic in design, containing little more than a large LARCAS interface and star charts on the back of the bridge. The bridge of the USS Saratoga NCC 31911 had a much more complex layout, including two additional standing consoles located behind the con and ops, parallel and slightly behind the captain's chair. The standing console on the port side of the ship contained the tactical station. Also located on the port side in the aforementioned bridge was a turbolift. Along the aft side of the bridge were various access stations. Relatively similar to the bridge of the Saratoga was the bridge of the USS Britain. Had a large support braces surrounding the captain's chair to the sides and rear. In place of the two standing consoles on the Saratoga was a single engineering station, placed directly behind the captain's chair and directly in front of an engineering MSD interface. The name Miranda-class was not mentioned in dialogue on screen, but was devised by the art department of TNG to refer to this design. The name was used on several pieces of on-screen signage referring to these vessels, and was also used by dedicated references such as the Star Trek Encyclopedia. In the first draft script of Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, the class of this ship was called the Reliant-class. According to the Star Trek Encyclopedia, the Miranda-class was named for Prospeto's daughter, a character in William Shakespeare's last play, The Tempest. According to an early final draft of the script for unnatural selection, the USS Lantry was identified as a Class R Starfleet supply ship rather than a Class 6 Federation supply ship. The initial length of the Miranda-class of 765 feet, or 233 meters, was established during the production of Star Trek II. That was later followed up by Andrew Probert during TNG Season 1, the exact length based on the universal acceptance length of the refit Constitution class. At least behind the scenes, at 1,000 feet and assuming that both classes employed standard ship components like nacelles and saucer sections, is 234.9 meters or 770 feet. Production Base, ASDB, Integration Facility. Starbase 134, Integration Facility, Rigel 4. Type, Medium Cruiser. Accommodations, 220 officers and crew. 500 personal evacuation limit. Power plant, 1500 plus Cochrane warp core feeding 2 nacelles, 1 impulse system. Dimensions, length 277.76 meters, beam 173.98 meters, height 65.23 meters. Mass 655,000 metric tons. Performance warp 9.2 for 12 hours. Armament 6 Type 7 phaser emitters, 2 pulse phaser cannons, 2 photon torpedo launchers. The named ships commissioned: USS Antres, NCC 9844, USS Bretagne, NCC 21166, USS Lantry, NCC 1837, USS Majestic, NCC 31060, USS Nautilus, NCC 31910, USS Reliant, NCC 1864, USS Saratoga, NCC 1887, USS Saratoga again, NCC 31911, USS Shirkar, NCC 31905, USS Sitak, NCC 32591, USS Tanneman, NCC 21382, and the USS Tridal, NCC 1948. Then thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more. Leave a comment or a thumbs up if you can. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.